Welcome back. It's Beyond the Box Score. I'm Dan Schneier. That's Jacob Gibbs. And today we are leading off, Jacob, with the review that caught our attention. And by the way, I haven't been doing my job as plug god. I have not been asking the loyal listeners and this unbelievable, quite honestly, unbelievable community we've built, looking at the comments, looking at the constant support they've given us, to leave us ratings and reviews on iTunes and Spotify. That's my fault. I'm no plug god. I was once a plug god. These days are over for now, but I am rising again to ask you all to please leave us a rating and review on Spotify and iTunes, and we will do a better job of answering those questions on air if you leave us a rating and review on iTunes and Spotify. We will find the best questions, we'll answer them on air, and you will help us grow the show. So thank you. Please do that. Make sure you hit the like button too if you watch the show on YouTube. Hit that like button, leave us a comment, but today we are starting with the haters, Jacob, because they deserve time and attention as well. What is this first review and rating that we are going to read on today's show?
Good to see you, Dan. Nice hoodie. Yeah, we've made it. I mean, we started
New
this
hoodie, by the way.
Expanded the show, started asking and pushing for, getting more reviews and everything back in June, I think, maybe July. So we're going on like 6 months now, all 5 stars. Love you guys. Appreciate the hell out of you. Like, thank you. That's so cool. We've, seen that number really rise, and that's been cool to get more people in here who didn't know about the show. But the streak is over. We finally got our first non-5 star. Dan is so annoying. Dart has played 2 games. Get over it, basically. This is a sentiment I've seen expressed a little bit in the comments, is that people feel like you're a homer, Dan, or whatever. Guys, Jaxson Dart, what Jaxson Dart is doing right now deserves to be talked about. The dude's averaging over 20 fantasy points per game. If you look back, dating to 2000, through an initial 4 games of a quarterback's career, Jaxson Dart is QB 8 in points, dating back to 2000, ahead of Andrew Luck, ahead of Joe Burrow, ahead of Aaron Rodgers, through an initial 4 starts. If you look at just round 1 quarterbacks, he's QB 7. That removes Jalen Hurts. So let me show you the list real quick. But I feel like Jaxson Dart is relevant, and we've talked about him because of that and because he's extremely fun. So I think that is a pretty ridiculous comment. Maybe we can get it amended if we're nice, but honestly, I don't really feel like,
hopefully you can
being that nice today. Here it is. Deshaun Watson, of course, had the crazy start. Most of these quarterbacks you'll notice are extreme rushing quarterbacks, and I think are interesting for the purpose of the Dart discussion. So you see their rushes here. Like, Dart has 35 through his initial 4 starts compared to 40 for Dante Culpepper, 46 for Jaden Daniels, 41 for RG3, 33 for Cam Newton, 20 for Deshaun Watson, 22 for Patrick Mahomes. This is a good list, right? Like, the only players who really tapered off were like Watson and RG3 for various reasons, right? Like, I guess that injury could be a risk when you're talking about a quarterback who runs this much. That could be something that becomes a problem for Dart. But by and large, the quarterbacks that are at the top of this list, I mean, I guess if you get down to like Anthony Richardson at QB 14, that's a bust. But everything else looks pretty good. Lamar Jackson, Kyler Murray, CJ Stroud, Aaron Rodgers, Joe Burrow, Jordan Love. These are only round 1 quarterbacks. But still, like, to start this successfully has normally led to a very fruitful real-life career in a lot of the cases. In almost all of these cases, has been a very fruitful fantasy career. So, yeah, Jaxson Dart deserves his flowers.
Yeah, he does. And look, I honestly listen back to our shows, and I don't feel like we've spent that much time on Jaxson Dart. We spent the right amount of time on him, and maybe I'll make references to him at times when discussing other quarterbacks. That's because I watch the most film of Dart, so I can draw on what I see there versus what I see with other players. So hopefully, it is what it is, Jacob. I've learned from doing this for a long time that I am controversial in my delivery or something, because I have haters, I have lovers, I have haters. That's how I go about things. Maybe it's because I speak in too much absolute, so I have to work on that. But I'm working on everything, and I will work on less time spent with Jaxson Dart. And today, this show is not about Jaxson Dart. This show is about revisiting players, backfields that maybe haven't gone the way we've wanted them to, and also looking at some situations and comps for players that have gone the way we've wanted them to at the running back position. So that's going to be our deep dive today. Let's see. We're throwing comments up today. Maybe we should touch on
I'm throwing some comments on the screen because, yes, we aren't here to talk about Jaxson Dart. We're here to talk about running backs, specifically
Yes.
rookies mostly. But we're just going to get into a lot of different backfields. We've got questions here about Kenneth Walker, about Brashard Smith and Kareem Hunt even, So, yeah, there's definitely a lot to cover today. Of course, the people need to know about Travion Henderson. We put him and RJ Harvey up on the thumbnail because there is a lot to cover. Like, is it time to give up on these guys? Is it time to drop? A lot of these players are going to be dropped. And so, like Dan brought up on the waiver wire show, keep an eye out on the after waiver wire, people that you can pick up, the dumpster diving. See if you get a Bayshul Tuten who's dropped during his bye week, that kind of thing. So that's what we're here for today.
And when you threw up the cut up last night, because I was on Twitter, saw it. When you threw up the cut up of here's every Travion Henderson touch from week 7, I thought about the reference to I don't want to even be around anymore. It's just like 3 runs up the gut with 0 chance. Like
2
I was
runs.
watching with 2 runs up the gut with 0 chance. No creativity. No, let's get Henderson in space. No, let's try to guess when the defense is blitzing and throw a screen to Henderson. It was just right up the middle. And I was watching. I was like, there really was nowhere for Henderson to go. It's so hard to evaluate how he's playing and performing right now for the Patriots because I don't feel like he's being given any opportunity to have success.
Yeah, it's pretty rough. It's pretty rough there. We'll get to that. Okay. I wanted to start with some fantasy relevant stuff because a lot of the stuff that we're going to get in today is more stylistic things and we're gonna spend some time with rushing efficiency and stuff like that as we compare within backfields. And I think that's kind of almost the only way that you should be using rushing efficiency, especially with a small sample size, which is what we're looking at, less than half of a season. And the reason I say that is there's so many factors that go into rushing efficiency numbers. And so comparing one backfield to another is most of the time is just a waste of your time. But I think if you're at least looking at backs within the same backfield, it can be relevant. And then even sometimes then it's a waste of time if they're completely different types of backs and the team uses them in different ways, like Gibbs and Montgomery, for example. But, we're going to try to do our best to responsibly get into some of that efficiency metrics and stuff like that, in addition to some stylistic descriptions to maybe help you understand better, why certain running backs are getting used in certain ways and if we can expect that to change and whatnot. But I want to first spend a little bit of time with what's relevant for fantasy, because I don't think that a lot of the stuff we'll talk about today is actually that relevant to scoring points, even though it's interesting, unless it leads to a role change. You know what I'm saying? But we know what's relevant for fantasy running backs: getting on the field, getting the ball, especially in the passing game and especially in the red zone, right? So that's what we're going to look at today. I've got the fantasy points data suite here to help. And then I am going to also, I'll just throw this up on the screen now while I get the data suite pulled up. I'm going to also, Dan, show you where I landed on updated rest of season rankings. So if you guys didn't catch yesterday's episode, Dan and I talked through rest of season rankings. We did a bunch of profiles for wide receivers and tight ends that I think are pretty interesting. And we also talked through this back end RB2 range and gave you some buys. If you need points now, I think Ramondre Stevenson and DeAndre Swift stand out as really good buys. Swift has some good matchups here and has been running really hot. So here's where I landed, Dan. These, you see the pluses and the minus, the ups and downs. That's reflective of where I've moved since our discussion yesterday. So Swift has moved up the most. While I pull up some of these advanced stats, I would love to hear any of your thoughts on the Chicago backfield.
Yeah, I got a chance to watch the Bears just this past game versus the Saints. Didn't have time to do week 6 as well, but I did then watch the cut up you did of all their touches. So that was definitely interesting. I think right now it's a combination of 2 things. It's a combination of the Bears offensive line, or I'd say 3 things actually, Jacob, and they're all good things if you roster DeAndre Swift and even Kyle Monungai. 1, the Bears offensive line is doing an excellent job getting to the second level on a lot of these runs. That's something you just don't see watching a lot of run game, because I also watch ETN, his snaps from the past 2 weeks. You just don't see that right now for the Jaguars. And they did make major investments in the offensive line this past offseason. So it makes sense that they would be improving when it comes to climbing, getting to the second level, executing their run plays and their run scheme. Also, it's Ben Johnson's run scheme is really freaking good, man. We've known this for a while, but on the third one, and this goes for both Monungai and Swift, but specifically for Swift, I feel like this is the best job I've seen individually from Swift in his entire career. Now, I'd have to go back and look at the tape with the Eagles because he did have a really strong season there, and they obviously block it up well. But man, he's doing such a good job of, one, finding the cutback lane, and two, being really decisive with his jump cuts to get to that cutback lane. Right now, it's all working in sync right now for that Chicago Bears run game. In my mind, they should be even leaning on it more than they are. Like, there are too many times I thought in the Saints game where they went away from the run game. They would put Caleb in the gun, which is, again, where he was comfortable playing at USC and Oklahoma. I get it. But when they're under center, that's where Caleb also is at his best, with these deep play action dropbacks or with the bootlegs to get Caleb in space. Has not really been great out of the gun. And then it just kind of limits what they can do in the run game. So right now it might be something we see moving forward with the Bears, where they get more under center more and really have this offense operate through the run game. Because during that game against the Saints, when they were at their best and most efficient on offense, it was when they were operating it through the run game.
Yeah, that's what I saw too. I feel pretty. I mean, you see, I moved Swift up more than anybody here. I feel pretty good about him after watching. Like, I think Swift can run like hot and cold. He's, I think, kind of a high variance runner, and I feel like I remember this was the same thing last year. I should have double checked, but I've just had a bunch of stuff that I've been doing. I feel like at the beginning of last year, wasn't he awful? I feel like at the beginning of last year, he was like in all of the, like, these are the worst running backs in the NFL lists. And then he actually got better as the year went on. And I do think that maybe sometimes with Swift, it's easy to overreact to like a 4-game sample, because he is just kind of a volatile player. And we've seen him rip off some big plays as the run game continues to find its rhythm and open up even more lanes. And I think for as much as like Swift's vision can be frustrating when watching down to down, like him trying to navigate tight quarters and stuff behind the line of scrimmage. But like when he gets out in open field, he's actually pretty good, I think, at being able to find creative ways to like use his burst and create huge plays. And
I would agree with that. And I would also just add, like, that issue is less of an issue when Ben Johnson's scheming up the run like this and they're blocking like they are.
Yeah, that's where I was at. Basically, it's like, I think that there's a pretty good chance that this will continue. I guess I would be a little bit nervous about like going all in, believing it, because it could be sort of similar to like Jacksonville, where they were crushing people on the ground and creating all these lanes. And I feel like lately teams have really crept up to stop that. And so you watched a lot of Caleb too. I saw you tweeting out Caleb clips. I feel like it's been getting pretty bad lately with Caleb, where I'm getting real nervous. And I'm curious how defenses might adjust as the run game is working better than the pass game lately.
It was a frustrating watch, to be honest, against the Saints. With Caleb right now, it's weird. There's two things I think are an issue for him. One, and the most important one, is when he's navigating the pocket, he's just not doing a good job of keeping his eyes downfield. It may be in some part due to the way that he navigates the pocket. He really likes to keep it tight inside there, and he's not a tall quarterback, so he's not like moving in and out of the pocket. But when he does break the pocket and roll either to his left or right, he really just tends to sprint out, not keeping his eyes downfield. And he's missed a lot of things. I put one out there just before the show, man. Like, he missed a deep over route to Colston Loveland that was designed perfectly by Ben Johnson. Like, he has DJ Moore clearing with a vertical, and then he has another vertical on the other side. If he just leads Loveland there, it like may very well be a touchdown or at least like a 60-yard play. Misses that. There was a great 3rd and 9 designed by Ben Johnson to get Adunze in motion from right to left. So like the designs have been good. And when he does have time in the pocket, he's doing a good job at times of throwing with anticipation, especially in the quick game, trusting his arm talent and leading the ball and ripping the ball. Like, that's where I always thought he'd be at his best at the NFL level. When I watched him at USC, it was like with that lightning quick Aaron Rodgers release. But the problem is when it's not happening that way, and that's the case a lot in these games for any NFL game, right? When you have to either navigate the pocket or your left, because their left tackle's been struggling in pass protection. Your left tackle gives an early pressure. He just doesn't seem to have, in my mind, that like second gear, I guess I would call it, of like understanding how to navigate the pocket while keeping his eyes downfield. Like, he missed that play with Loveland. He also missed a red zone busted coverage for Odunze. That would have been a touchdown. It was on a 3rd and 8 in the red zone. Instead, he again, just not a good job of navigating the pocket. Odunze's throwing his hand up all through for like 6 seconds in that play. So right now, I feel like they're at their best when they put him under center rather than in the gun, operating a run heavy scheme and then play action off the run. Because there were a couple plays off play action. He hit a deep on a backside dig. I believe it was to Burden for 22 yards. Great job, great play call, but great play design. But he sees it better because he can come off the play action, deep drop, step up, and rip that ball into that window to Burden. Same thing on a couple of the boot action plays that they ran, one to Moore. Like that's another good idea for him. But right now, when it comes to like out of the gun drop back passing, I just don't think he's seeing it all that well right now. And another problem is like on the Swift play, they called back for what I thought was a BS offensive pass interference on Loveland. The touch throws are really hurting him too. Like Swift was running a wheel route. He's not a really good touch thrower right now. He's a great drive thrower, but he's not a good touch thrower. And it's leading to a lot of just misses or throws that aren't maximizing yards after the catch.
Yeah, that's where I'm at with Caleb. I think you hit on a lot of the important things that are cropping up as potential problems, and it took you a while. There's a lot of them, right? That's kind of where I'm at. Is like I watched, I'm like, oh gosh, like a lot of this stuff seems like it's kind of getting worse as the year goes on, and a lot of it could be detrimental and like things that get in the way of them being able to be a functional offense. Like for a lot of the things that have worked, they're still, and for the fact that they have a good record, like they're still not great in some efficiency metrics. They're more like middle of the pack to even like back end. And I think that just has a lot to do with Caleb and them kind of playing around limitations that he has right now. We'll see. Maybe it gets better. We know he has the talent to make any throw, but
he has the talent to make any throw. Let me be clear on that. And I do think that's why, you put him under center, you have him running these defined drop back, play action, hit your back foot and rip it, kind of like a Shanahan type idea, Shanahan McVay. It could work. And I know Ben Johnson is a smart OC, but there are also just times like there's weird stuff you see on tape. Like I just have this for my notes. The first 3rd and long was either 3rd and 9 or 3rd and 12. He throws to the boundary side, but he had numbers to the field side. Like the Saints had more defenders to the boundary side. He had 2-on-2, 2 defenders on a 2-man route on the field side. I would just expect him to do a better job of recognizing the space to the field side and then hitting like a Dunze on a stop route or making a check kill before the line of scrimmage to get into a better route combo on the field side where he has the space. But because I see it from some other quarterbacks, some rookies, like players who haven't had as much time in the NFL. And also, like the first interception he threw, like that's just a really, really bad interception. He's trusting his arm there, but like he's not reading the defensive back's leverage. The DB is in off leverage, outside off leverage, playing at the sticks, and he tries to throw, and he's backpedaling. He stopped at the stick so he can drive on the football, and he tries to throw an out route, and of course it gets intercepted. Like the DB has outside leverage, and he's playing at the stick. So just like processing has been weird. And I'll say this about Caleb. What last thing about him, Jacob? I loved him as a prospect. I didn't have the courage to put May higher, though I did kind of feel like May was my boy. But I didn't have the courage because Caleb, like the upside of him was so strong. But there weren't really great, like you never know when it comes to quarterback processing when you come from the college game to the NFL game. And there was no indicator to suggest he was like this elite processor. And I'm just concerned, like, will he get to the level he needs to get to from a processing standpoint at the NFL level? It's anyone's guess at this point.
Yeah, it is just a guess. We'll see. All right, we do need to talk about running backs. We're going to do that after our break. I'm going to bring up here this question from the chat. What about Tuten? Why is Tuten so high still in Jacob's rest of season rankings at RB30? You'll notice, I mean, he's the player I've probably been the most stubborn about moving down. Kenneth Walker is dropping. RJ Harvey is dropped down to 33, so he's below Tuten. And Travion Henderson is nowhere to be seen. So a lot of these running backs who are not getting on the field and helping us for fantasy right now are dropping, but Tuten remains high. We'll get back to that after the break, and we'll talk through some more backfields.
What's he like? The happy-faced killer?
You mean my dad? Be glad you never have to know.
You think that you're so much better than me. You're just like your old man.
I'm not like you at all.
Okie doke. I made up some stats to help me feel better about Bayshul too. Okay, so this stat is on the Fantasy Points data suite. You can filter out yards before contact, and I do think that is relevant because, especially in the Jacksonville case here, but like with any backfield, it's cool to be able to do this. So the Jaguars at the beginning of the year were just like creating tons of gash plays, and Travis Etienne was like just chewing up yards before contact. I don't want to take anything away from Etienne. He was making these plays, and he was occasionally making stuff happen after contact as well. But we've seen, as there's been not as much yards blocked lately, that Etienne's numbers have really dried up. Tuten hasn't had a big play yet. And I do think as I'm watching him more and more that like some of that could be on him. There's some times where I feel like he's not quite taking what's there like fast enough, maybe. But I also do think that he's been clearly better than ETN at navigating traffic and like making a dead play into like something positive. And so the stat I've got here is yards per rush when initial contact with the defender was met only 1 yard beyond the line of scrimmage or at or behind the line of scrimmage. So taking out plays where there were 2 or more yards before initial contact. The leaders in this, Jonathan Taylor at 3.41, 3.33 yards per rush on these types of rush for Javonte Williams, and then 3.27 for Bayshul Tuten. And then I broke this down even more specifically, and I think this is pretty cool. It's the same types of runs, and I've got a group here which is running backs who have averaged at least 2 yards after contact on these types of runs where they were met 1 yard past the line of scrimmage or shorter. And then I sorted it by avoided tackle rate or missed tackles force. This is per the fantasy points data suite. And Tuten's at the very top, 45%, followed by 43% missed tackle force rate for Jahmyr Gibbs. Jalen Warren is next, 34%. Cam Skadaboo's next, 30%. And then you have Bijan Robinson, Ashton Jeanty at 29, 28%. And then Ramondre Stevenson at 26%. Travion Henderson actually did hit the 2+ qualifier in terms of 2 yards after contact created on these runs. But he's not forcing missed tackles. That's not really the runner that he is. That wasn't what he was in college either. He's more like finish through you to get the extra yards. Stevenson has done a good job though. There's multiple metrics that I've seen lately that pop up as like him being a top half of the league type of a runner. And I think it's especially important that he's able to do this on these plays where the line doesn't get much push, because while the Patriots line has been better than we expected, it's still probably middle of the pack, I would say. They still are missing some things. And I think that's been a little bit frustrating when watching the Henderson tape, especially as they're trying to run up the middle a lot with Henderson. And a lot of the times people are just missing assignments that you can tell that like he thinks it's going to get picked up and then it's not. And then he's like, what do I do here? So yeah, all of the Henderson stuff is weird. I've moved him way down. Running back 49 behind Kenneth Gainwell and Tyjae Spears and Isaiah Davis and Brashard Smith and Kyle Monangai. Sure, he could be better than that. We've talked about yesterday, like they've got the week 14 bye, and then the 3 games that follow that are really nice. So if Henderson gets a bigger roll out of the bye, or if Stevenson gets hurt or something, there's still that kind of late season upside for Henderson that exists. But you're probably just betting on something random, like an injury or something like that at this point. There's no indication at all that he's trending in the right direction. So yeah, just wanted to show you a few random stats here to give you an idea of like why I'm still at least curious and even like a little bit optimistic about Tuten. Is I do think that this like problem solving behind the line of scrimmage is important. And we did just see Liam Cohen last year like care about that with Bucky Irving. That was part of what got him on the field more, was he was like league best at this kind of stuff. And I wonder if, especially if the line isn't creating such huge lanes, if we do see more Tuten out of the bye, because the vibes have been really weird with Jacksonville lately, right? And so like I think things could shift around. It seems like they're more focused on trying to fix the pass game, and I don't think Etienne deserves to lose his job or anything. But do you have any thoughts? You watched some of this backfield, right?
Yeah, I did watch the last 2 games, all snaps from the running back. So just looking at my notes here. When it comes to ETN, I feel like he's a better back when the Jags are creating for him. And this kind of checks out with his forced missed tackle rate over the years, dating back to Clemson in the years where he was really good, because there's just too many examples that I saw when they're not creating for him, either with, scheme, moving, getting guys in motion, getting the defense going one way, using the motion, and then kind of going back the other way. I feel like they need more like toss crack plays like that for ETN. Because when he's just asked to either process a cutback lane or run duo or anything like that, even inside zone, I just don't think his vision is very good. I never did, but I still think he's a good runner in a different way. They like the only space they found in, I'll start with just the Rams game. The only space they found was once they went down 35-7, they started to get some runs going. And I did see a couple runs from Tuten where I did kind of want to see more of the Virginia Tech version of Tuten, where like he would just kind of create that, because it seems like with ETN, when he's trying to get to the cutback lane, I was trying to figure out how I would describe this on the pod, Jacob, because it's so difficult for me to put into terms. When he sees the cutback lane, ETN, it's not like a very like direct jump cut, with like not a lot of wasted space to get to that cutback lane. It's almost like a little bit of like a choppy's not the right word, like a rounded type path toward that cutback lane. And I don't feel like Tuten was very decisive either, but he only had really one opportunity before it was 35-7. The real issue for me, Jacob, when I watch these last two games is like, earlier in the season, I think the Jacksonville Jaguars run game worked because teams were game planning them in a different way. They were looking at it and they were like, there's Brian Thomas Jr. I have to really be aware of him on all plays. There's Travis Hunter at times, and there's Trevor Lawrence. I need to scheme my defense from the top down. Now, at least against the Rams, it was a totally opposite approach, and it's one that I think every defense will potentially and should take against the Jaguars. It's let's get an advantage from a number standpoint in the box and make sure they can't do anything in the run game, and we'll just see what Trevor Lawrence can do on the vertical game with Brian Thomas Jr., this guy who really killed all these defenses last year, and we schemed at the beginning of the year to take him away, but do we really need to? Is Trevor Lawrence really going to hurt us? Is Brian Thomas Jr. really going to hurt us vertically if we don't scheme to take that away and we do try to get an advantage in the box? And that's an issue, like, to be quite honest with you, because I think teams will try to just get an advantage in the box until Brian Thomas Jr., for example, proves that they shouldn't.
Yeah, I think that makes sense. That's where I've arrived as I've watched them, is like, I think it kind of feels like this might be about to fall apart unless Travis comes out and like does some really special stuff as a receiver, and really threatens people. But I think that's asking a lot of Travis, and they're already asking a lot of him, So yeah, I'm pretty nervous about it. I do think it makes sense to try to get Tuten integrated into the offense more as like a fail-safe if that kind of scenario arises. And I feel like it might already kind of be like you talked about with the Rams. I mean, they got completely stymied offensively in that game. It was pretty embarrassing. And so I think Liam Cohen probably will take note of that. And I do think he likes Tuten, and like it seems like he's noticed that he's better at this stuff. And it's not like just that Tuten is at the top of these lists. It's also that ETN is like near the bottom in most of these lists. Another thing that stood out to me was like, and this isn't a perfect stat, but I think it's interesting at least. And can often be directionally accurate, which is the next gen stats like rushing yards over expectation. In terms of the percentage of runs that gain positive yards, the only running back who has a lower rate than ETN is Alvin Kamara. And I do think it's kind of like the Kenneth Walker Charbonnet thing, where it's like I feel like they need more consistency from that spot, and that could be Tuten. I wish he doesn't have enough runs for next gen to qualify. But what I was saying when I think that Liam Cohen has noticed it is that we've seen specific instances in short yardage situations where he's been on the field. He's been brought out for those plays. So I think it's possible that we'll continue to see him used more that way.
Yeah, I mean, some of it is, like, to me at least, as simple as like Tuten runs with a really good low center of gravity.
Yeah.
ETN runs high. Same thing with Walker versus Charbonnet. And that could lead, it makes sense why that checks out statistically, that he'd have fewer negative runs. I think that just from watching this run game, he should definitely be more involved, but I think they have bigger issues right now as far as just like trying to get an advantage in the box with the run game. I remember I was talking before about like how good of a job it looked like the Bears were doing getting to the second level on their blocks. I do not feel like the Jaguars offensive line is doing a good job with that.
Yeah, lately for sure. We'll see. We'll see how it develops. I have enough faith in Liam Cohen that I'm not like, sound the alarm, it's over, like sell your Jags. It's just gonna be a disaster. But those are kind of the vibes I get feeling it. Like I don't really know what to do.
No, I don't feel that. I also think the last two matchups were really difficult. Those are two of the better defenses they're going to play all season, both schematically and talent-wise.
Yeah. Okay, so I want to get into the receiving stuff. The receiving side of things is what I wanted to look at from like a league-wide standpoint. So I'm going to pull up a few tables here from Fantasy Points data. First one is route rate at the running back position. I've said this on the podcast before. I trust their route rate better. I like it better because it filters out some of the trash plays where the receiver's not actually involved as a route runner. They're like blocking on a screen or whatever. And so this is sorted by week 7 route rates. You'll see Bijan Robinson at the top with an 83% rate. Only 2 other guys, Rashad White and Christian McCaffrey, are even above 70%. Ramondre Stevenson is 4th at 64%, to give you an idea of like where we're at with the running back position. If anybody at the top stands out to you, shout it out. But I want to go and look more at this kind of back end range a little bit, because that's what we've been focused on lately. And I feel like the top like 12 running backs are kind of like cemented. We kind of know, we have a pretty good grasp on their role and what their offenses look like and everything. So DeAndre Swift is somebody I wanted to point out here. Like his route rate has been around 40% lately. There at times it's spiked to like 60%. But we've seen it dropping lately. That's not an awful rate. Like you can get away with it. That's basically where Kyron Williams is. That's often where Jahmyr Gibbs is. His rate has been slowly falling as the year goes on. Travis Etienne is another running back who's right in this 40% range. But I did want to bring it up for like some of these backs are like on the periphery of, fantasy relevance. Like it's fragile. It wouldn't take much loss of usage for them to become like really, really risky plays week to week. I would prefer a running back like this to be like Jordan Mason, even is up into the 48-50% range. Chase Brown is still hovering around the 50% range. Kamara in the 60% range. Like you need to be out there running routes if you're going to get targets, and targets are really, really important for fantasy. Even in non-PPR formats, targets are worth more than rush attempts for fantasy. So they're really important. And running backs who aren't allowed to run routes, just how do you get targets? Jaylen Warren is like one of the few, because I've got the same thing, but it's target share. And so you'll see on the year, Jaylen Warren is running back 7, if you remove Bucky Irving, who's barely played, in target share. And like that's because they do a lot of like play action type stuff that gets in the ball. Like they're a lot more under center. They're a different kind of offense. But generally speaking, if you're down in this range with the players that I've highlighted here, it is a problem for fantasy. Like Ja'Cory Krosky-Merritt has topped out at 40%, 35% this past week. I'm pretty nervous about him this week against the Chiefs, right? If they get down. And just in general, I'm pretty nervous if Jane Daniels can't get on the field, if their receivers can't get on the field, because it's like they're loading the box and he's not involved as a route runner. So like he's got to get there with extreme rushing efficiency. And it's got to be like Judkins. Like Judkins is one of the few running backs who has been able to make this equation work. Like you just have to freaking dominate as a runner. Whereas Judkins, 26% each of these past 2 weeks. The highest his route rate has been is 34%.
And that's I think you just did a great job outlining why I am skeptical about Judkins.
Right. You've said it a bunch, and people push back on it and say that like, well, he could be, and maybe he could be, but like we're not seeing anything close to that. Right. And they have a guy that like they like specifically for that role. And Jerome Ford. And I even think that Dylan Sampson would probably step in ahead of him in that role. Like if they want a specific like player to fill that role, that is meaningful, like they're showing you that like, not only do they not want Judkins in it, they like value having somebody who does that specific thing.
And Washington has that with McNichols as well.
Yeah. Plenty of coaches do that. I do think that Bill has more potential. Like we've at least seen signals of them wanting to get him in more as a passing down back. They've run screens to him. They've been working with him off the, in practice and stuff as a pass catcher. They pushed his route rate up to 40%. With Judkins, we've seen nothing like that. This is a staff that's like used Jerome Ford like this in the past. And there's plenty of staffs that do that. And it is what it is. Like, unless all of those running backs get hurt and it's just Judkins, then like, I doubt it's going to change in a meaningful way. Woody Marks is a very weird one to me. The team was like, the Texans were very intentional to go get Woody Marks. They traded draft capital to move up to get him. But like his skill set coming in, like in theory was just a passing down back. But then they bring him in and they're not really even using him that way. They're pounding him up the middle. And it's like, what's going on here? What is this? It's not working. His highest route rate is 44%. It's been at 29% and 35% the past 2 weeks. And he's not really getting targets. And to me, it makes so much sense that you would get him targets. Like they need some kind of easy button short targets for Stroud. Instead, it's been like Stroud has scrambled more this year. But like Dalton Schultz has gotten a lot of targets. Has, I guess, been the other thing where they go too short. But like why isn't it Marks? It seems like they would make him more of a priority, and maybe that will expand, but it hasn't so far.
There's one thing I couldn't be more sure of. It's that Bobby Sloak was made a scapegoat when he never should have been. Yes, they were bad last year. Their offensive line was a major reason for that. But this current version of their offensive scheme, it is really this current, like, I can't understand that. I can't understand a lot of things that they're doing offensively from a schematic standpoint.
Kenneth Walker really, really low here as well. Just wanted to make note of that. 31% this week. And he's down at, outside of the top 20 running backs. And route rate, I'm pretty sure most of it's going to Charbonnet. Yeah, 40%, 45% is generally where he's at. So that's tough. And neither one of them are really getting targets. Yeah, I mean, here's the target shares for Charbonnet. It's nothing. It's never been above 8% a game all year. Kenneth Walker had 13% target rate in week 1, but since then it hasn't been above 8% a game all year. So that's pretty concerning. The guys I wanted to talk about here were Ramondre Stevenson, James Cook, Travis Etienne, and Ashton Genty, where it's like Genty had a couple spike weeks, but like we see last week when the targets aren't there, it's 4 freaking points. And like James Cook is just like, we know what he is, but I wanted to bring up that like Etienne and Pacheco and players like that also fit into this archetype. Woody Marks so far. I feel like it's easy to get excited about somebody like Pacheco. We're going to talk about that backfield more, but like with these guys, like if they don't have the passing, it's just, they're pretty tough players to use for fantasy unless they're James Cook, unless they're in like a perfect situation. And so I did want to bring up Etienne again, because I feel like we'll go to break after this, but I just wanted to get back to the Etienne and the Tuten stuff. Like, I feel like it probably feels really weird where I have Etienne at running back 27, but there's a number of things to worry about at this point, right? Like the role was fragile at the beginning and he was fine because of this extreme efficiency. But now like the role is even tapering off a little bit and Tuten could get more involved. And if he did, it would be like so over for Etienne, I think. It would just like, he would be a slightly better version of RJ Harvey or something where you're like just hoping for big plays. And so that's, I don't know, like if you can move him for like any of these players that I have above him, I would definitely do that. And honestly, I'm not far away from just like moving Rico Dowdle ahead of him, moving Isaiah Pacheco ahead of him, that's kind of where I'm at with Etienne.
Yeah, I don't hate it. I mean, look, we're talking about players to be potentially moved ahead of him that aren't in lead roles, and he is still technically in a lead role, right? Like you could watch the tape and you could see he's their lead back over Tuten. But what you're speculating on, which I don't mind because I think it has legs, is will that continue rest of season? Because Tuten may be the more efficient runner for this scheme. And then it turns, I don't think it'll ever go to a hard RJ Harvey situation from a like snap share standpoint. I think at worst it'll be like a 50-50, but we're talking about a much worse offense than we expected them to be overall. And then specifically in the run game. I
think that LaQuint Allen really matters, and maybe I am too high.
Yeah, that is fair. That is fair.
Maybe I'm too high on Tuten for that reason too, because like LaQuint Allen, I think is going to get 20-ish% of the snaps and a lot of the routes and stuff like that. And so I think if Tuten gets integrated as like the preferred option on early downs, that leaves Etienne in this really weird range where he's like just kind of a change of pace player. And this all sounds crazy because we haven't seen it happen yet. But I think basically him and Tuten would flip roles in this scenario in terms of playing time. And Tuten is basically RJ Harvey. Like that's basically the role that he's in right now. Alrighty, let's hit our second break and then we'll get back and get into the Carolina backfield.
You can always count on Sundays with the NFL on CBS and Paramount Plus. So even if you can't count on accurate expiration dates,
that is a rookie mistake.
Or people appreciating your fashion sense.
Jim, the crowd is not on board here.
You can always count on Sundays with the NFL on CBS, streaming on Paramount Plus.
Glad we wear our good jerseys.
Yeah.
Alrighty, before we get into the Carolina backfield, I just wanted to bring up this stat because, we just talked about a lot of stuff that's not so fun, right? But like, this is fun. This is yards per route run over the past month, and Bijan Robinson is just below Puka Nacua and just above Amon-Ra St. Brown. Christian McCaffrey, like just below Justin Jefferson and Jamar Chase. These guys are freaking dominating, man. They're so they're just cracked for fantasy. Like
Yep.
we brought it up a week ago or whatever, where they're like averaging 25 points per game, and CMC was averaging 3 yards per carry, and like neither one of them are really finding the end zone as rushers. And it's like, yeah, it's because of this. Like, this is so insane.
We will revisit this in the offseason if it's for a bigger discussion, I think. But man, we talked about this. RB involvement in the passing game is so down league wide. It's been that way for a nice 2-year stretch now. When you can find these rare opportunities to get players who are this involved in the pass game for auction leagues, these are just these players can define your season. Like Bijan Robinson and Christian McCaffrey, if you roster them right now, let me know what your records are in the comments. I would imagine at worst you're 5-2.
This is really a Matthew Golden tweet. You see 2.2 yards per run over the past month.
So sad.
Keep the light on. Hey,
you know what's the worst part about the Matthew Golden situation that I didn't even realize till yesterday when I was looking through waivers and I acquired this guy in a couple leagues? Jaden Reed's going to be back in a couple weeks.
Christian Watson's going to be back too.
Christian Watson too. Like I don't know about Packers receivers ever again for me. I just can't do it, man. It's too frustrating. They're so talented too. Like Golden's so good. Get him the ball.
Okay. Carolina Backfield. Did you watch the film? I did. I watched both of them.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir.
What'd you think?
Yeah, so here's the deal with the Packers. I definitely think, and the narrative that the Panthers, the narrative that people have suggested is sort of true, which is that Dowdle is the better player for this backfield than Hubbard. Dowdle's an explosive player. He's really decisive. He's quick with his jump cuts, and he's powerful coming downhill. But there are areas that Hubbard gives them. Like I feel like Hubbard does a really good job of navigating behind the line of scrimmage when it's not there and finding space when it's not as obvious. Overall, I think it makes sense for them to turn this backfield more over to Dowdle, but I'm not so sure they will. Like Hubbard was the lead back in this game, and Hubbard played in key spots. Now, as far as the run game goes, it's definitely where they excel at, but there were so many situations where they were running into negative boxes, meaning the defense has more defenders in the box than the offensive has players to block, or even boxes where it's like 6-on-6 or 7-on-7. This is going to continue because I watched the entire game and I felt like almost all of their pass production was manufactured, either via quick game or screens, concepts to get Xavier Legette involved. But we don't have to touch on this episode, Jacob, but Tedero McMillan for me is just, I don't know if I'm ever going to be on board with where you rank him, or our expectations on him. Like this game plan was designed through Xavier Legette. This may not be the case moving forward, but it was in this game. And then their issues in pass protection, Jacob, are so obvious every time they drop back that like it limits what they can do in my mind in the run game too, because it's just it just makes their offense so one-dimensional. So for me, it's hard to get too excited about this run game, despite seeing some awesome plays here and there, because they do block it up well at times, because I think teams will do what the Jets did, which is really stack the box and try to get that numbers advantage in the box. I don't see any real reason not to, based on what I've seen from the Panthers pass game.
Yeah, I think that's fair. As I watched them, I did think that Rico clearly looked better, but I think that could shift, I think Chuba is good at the things you brought up, and that is a tough one. So I've got some stylistic stats I want to show you that I think are cool from Next Gen Stats. It's tough to live that way as a running back, especially when you've got a freaking like thumper in your backfield that like is just churning out positive plays. I think it almost makes you look worse by comparison. It's a much different talent level here, but that's kind of what happened. I feel like in Arizona's backfield, where Michael Carter is doing more of the horizontal stuff, he's like, this stat I'm going to show you from Next Gen Stats is like efficiency, like how much they're moving in total relative to how much actual like yardage they're creating. And Michael Carter is like by far the least efficient because he's doing all this side to side stuff. And then Bam Knight's like living up to his name and just like hitting it, and that's kind of what I felt like watching this. But at the same time, Chuba has so much good credit banked up here, I feel like, where he's been really important for them. And they know what he can do. So I don't think he'll go away, but it wouldn't surprise me if we do see it kind of lean more and more towards Rico, which is how I ranked it here. But I think either way, to Dan's point, like this isn't really a very fantasy friendly situation, most likely, because of the way the defenses might adjust, continue to adjust and load up to stop the run. And then also like neither of them are that involved in the passing game. You didn't see them, anywhere near the top.
No design targets for them. They try to screen a couple screens, but to the receivers.
Yeah. So I want to talk about Pacheco for fantasy. Like, would you take him above these two? There's one I do want to share these stats before we move on from Carolina, but we're going to talk about Pacheco in a moment. Would you take him above both Carolina guys?
Oh man, that's such an interesting question because like fantasy is so determined by scoring touchdowns. People always forget it or they just don't want to give into it because it's so hard to predict touchdowns. They're so random, but like they're not that random for a player like Pacheco, right? The only path for him to score a touchdown essentially is a long run. Dowdle and Hubbard can get these touchdowns to the red zone. Like the only thing the Panthers could do in the red zone successfully is run the ball. So I still think I think I might take both over Pacheco. Like I don't know the path for Pacheco. I just don't know it. I don't understand it really, unless the Chiefs become this team that's like blocking off and breaking out these like long touchdown runs for Pacheco.
Yeah, I think that's basically right. Like he doesn't get targets, and the touchdowns are going to be hard to predict, which is why I have him low. But things have been trending up recently. I would like to look at the late season schedule. I can't quite get it on the screen with our display here. He's got Dallas in week 13, and then Houston in week 14, the Chargers in week 15, the Titans in week 16, and the Broncos in week 17. So 14 and 17 aren't great matchups, but some of those other games feel like decent spots where you could start Pacheco. So he's kind of like off-brand Ramondre Stevenson in my mind. I think the schedule sets up better for Stevenson, and Stevenson, I trust his red zone role a little bit more.
Yes.
Is that basically where you're at? Yeah.
Trust his red zone role a lot more. I also like Brashard Smith's getting involved now. That's another problem.
We'll see on that.
Okay.
His backfield usage, his carries, like he got 14 carries. That was almost all at the end of the game when it's like Gardner Minshew and they're just icing it. But they did get him more involved in the first half in creative ways and stuff. I just wonder if with Rice getting more than a 40%, route rate, if maybe more of that goes to him or something. But we'll see. Like when they had McKinnon, it put a cap on what Pacheco could be, but Pacheco was still somebody you could use in fantasy, right?
Yes, but they didn't have Hunt during that time.
Right. No, totally
Hunt
valid.
is another nightmare for this fantasy situation.
Totally valid. Yep. I have Rico ranked ahead of Pacheco, but I do think both Pacheco and Hunt are players who I wouldn't mind having on rosters, if you're getting to the point where we're not quite there yet, but maybe in a month, if we're moving more towards like, all right, I want flex fill-ins on my roster more so than just pure stashes. I think they're both interesting in that way. And if something happens to either of them, then the other one suddenly is pretty interesting because they're almost a lock to get the goal line work.
Yeah, that's a good point. One of those two will be the goal line back.
I mean, we saw last year Kareem Hunt be pretty good for fantasy. Like you never really
Pacheco
knew
was hurt. Yep.
when the floor was going to fall out, but it's like there's plenty of weeks where he gets 2 touchdowns, so that could happen again. Like
Correct.
He's just, to me, it's like as you get down the stretch, that's probably a better player to hold than DJ Giddens and whatnot.
Yeah, that's fair.
Okay. I want to show you these stats per next gen. So they have, I told you about this efficiency of movement. I'm going to dig more into this and like chart some of it after this week. They don't have Tuten with quite enough carries. I'm hoping that he'll be in there. No, they've got a bye. Damn it. I want to like get this on and create some visuals for you guys. But I didn't really have time for it. So maybe we'll do that next week or the week after that. Because I do think some of this stuff is cool. But I think it's probably just descriptive type stuff, but I can do some testing with it and see if it's predictive of fantasy points in any way. But this, I think the way they described it is this efficiency metric is like a lower rate indicates more of like a north-south runner, and so you see these 5 right here have the lowest numbers in the league, and that's Rico Dowdle, Javonte Williams, Bill Krosky-Merritt, James Cook, and Kareem Hunt. And I thought that was just interesting for the Carolina guys to illustrate it that way. I brought up the yards over expectation stat earlier that Rico looked good. 51% of his runs gained yards over expectation, which was 3rd behind only Jalen Warren and Blake Corum. Chuba doesn't look so good in this metric. So, efficiency stats might not matter, and it is a small sample size, but it's possible that if it is like we're going to ride the hot hand, if Rico continues to be the hot hand, it's at least, I think, relevant to know like who it is. Right now, it is clearly Rico. Have you ever looked into any of this stuff? Like, I know I've brought up like time
That's very
spent,
cool.
time spent behind the line of scrimmage and stuff like that. That's another way to, I think it like goes hand in hand with the efficiency metric, but it's a little bit different. Like Cam Scadaboo's time spent behind the line of scrimmage is the third lowest. He's like getting there quickly, but his efficiency number is like a little bit higher. You know, it's not quite in the same range as like Kareem Hunt and some of these guys, because he does do some side to side stuff to make people miss and stuff like that, more than people realize, I think.
Yeah,
But like,
there's also some context to it. Like, are we evaluating players running in a zone scheme or power gap? Or
for sure. But like to your point about like attacking the gap and like attacking people with contact, Scadaboo, this I think time behind the line of scrimmage stat like definitely points to that. But yeah, people saw. So here's the top end of it. And it's like Bijan at the top, Charbonnet is really high as well, and people saw that with like Kenneth Walker and Charbonnet being really high. We're like, Seattle's line sucks again. Seattle's line maybe does kind of suck, but I think more so this is just they run a ton of zone runs, like outside zone runs and stuff like that. They take a little bit longer to develop. That's why Bijan Robinson is so high up here too, I think.
I think that makes a lot of sense.
I don't think any of this is
probably two of the most outside zone heavy teams in the NFL.
Yeah, I don't think being at the top is bad necessarily. And I'm going to do some more digging into this year's data and last year's. Like we brought up Saquon a few weeks back, and he's still really high in this number, whereas his time spent behind the line of scrimmage is much higher than it was last year. And it is a different coach and a slightly different scheme. But he's not like just outside zone and stuff like these guys. They do a little bit of that. But to me, there is kind of some weird stuff going on with him and potentially not trusting the blocking and stuff, which is totally fair with the way it's been blocked out the first, 6 weeks of the season. Another metric where Saquon stood out was this one where I was looking at, it's too messy to bring it on screen. The one that I brought up with Tuten earlier, where I was looking at like how successful they were at making people miss and creating yards on their own when not getting stuff blocked for them. Saquon looks awful in that metric this year. Yeah. And like, it wasn't like that last year on those specific runs. Obviously the blocking was better last year. Another metric that stood out is he had way, way more runs where he was hit at or behind the line of scrimmage, like by far the most of those runs in the NFL. Genty was second, but it was like a pretty decent gap between him and Genty. So yeah, I don't, will Saquon bounce back? That's like something people are always asking. If the line improves, like maybe, because this has clearly been affecting him so far.
Yeah, you can make the case. I mean, not going to make a lot of people happy, but you can make the case that he's one of the most blocking dependent running backs in fantasy football. It's going to make people mad, but
look at Eagles, like what happened, the Giants to last year's Eagles and then to this year, like
right. Those 3-year stretch really proves it. I mean, the Giants were not creating yards for contact and he had a bad season. The Eagles created the most yards for contact. He was the best running back in fantasy. They're not creating yards for contact again, and he's struggling. I have faith moving forward because of two things. One, I think the Landon Dickerson addition to the lineup is so massive for him and for the Eagles. Two, I think the Eagles are starting to challenge a little bit differently in the passing game. I was actually pretty impressed with the Devontae Smith tape we watched for yesterday's show and just the way that they're operating through the pass game. If the Eagles start to challenge in the pass game again and start to have like efficiency in the pass game and not just have everything be quick game, then teams are going to have to be lighter in the box. If teams are lighter in the box, it's going to afford opportunities, especially with Landon Dickerson back in the lineup, for Saquon to get those, yards created, those opportunities. Like really, Saquon was a big play merchant in a lot of ways for fantasy last year, and the Eagles were creating those opportunities where he could hit that lane and go. They need those again for him for fantasy.
It's so cool because I got just absolutely dunked on by people all year long on Saquon.
Yeah,
and I'm not saying that they were wrong, but it's just the Saquon thing felt fragile, and that's why I was like, I'd rather just avoid it. But this year, it's like kind of proving to be fragile, because he does need it blocked out, and he does need big, massive plays, and he needs receptions and stuff like that, which he's not really getting so much here.
You were right. You were just a year too late.
I wasn't right. I didn't take into account the amount of upside that he had to be justify that type of pick, which is why Jonathan Taylor this year, even though a lot of the math behind like what it might be was like kind of scary, and like if Daniel Jones would have sucked, then it would have been probably a
Yes.
pretty bad pick. I was still fine with him as a pick. I had him basically right where people had him ranked, because it could be awesome. Like we know he's awesome.
We learned from the Saquon situation.
We know the line could be awesome and everything. And so yeah, like the Saquon thing, I definitely wasn't right. But I do just want to like point out that it is a fragile equation, and especially with the offensive line now hurt and not playing very well, it can get really bad because he doesn't. They were at one point designing targets for him, but lately that has dried up too, and so it's pretty tough for fantasy. But maybe the line gets better. You felt like it's been.
I do see the
in the right
upside.
direction.
It's a combo of the line with Dickerson back, and then again, just like if the passing game is not just this simple quick game or deep shot, and they're doing a lot more concepts in the intermediate like they were against the Vikings, then that should make lighter that should afford opportunities for Saquon, I hope.
Yeah. All right, let's talk about the Denver Broncos. So I'll point you to these next-gen stats again. Got some interesting ways to think about RJ Harvey here. By far, the longest average time spent behind the line of scrimmage at 3.3 seconds. To be fair, they're doing a lot of those types of runs with him, right? You know, they're even doing some like end arounds and stuff like that. Occasionally, it'll be like a Bo Nix throw behind the line of scrimmage that gets charted as a run. They do outside zone stuff with him. So, like, I think that all comes into affecting this number. But also, this is a guy who's transitioning from a not pro level type of offense to being a pro, and sometimes is a little bit hesitant behind the line of scrimmage. You didn't watch Harvey for this, did you?
Did not have an opportunity to watch any of I mean, I watched the Broncos on tape from last week, so I saw his snaps against the Giants, but that's not enough.
Okay. Yeah, I've watched every Harvey run, and like I think that he could get there, but there was 3 games ago, I felt really encouraged and felt like it was like starting to slow down. And lately it's kind of like not felt that way as much. I think it's just like he's not getting enough looks to find a rhythm really.
Agreed on that. He needs to get full series, and they're not willing to give him a full series right now.
They did in that game, and that's when he looked really good. And they said that they wanted to do that more. Yeah, I think it was it was the game where he got in at the end of the game and had like garbage time production. And it looked like a really good game. But even before that, they were alternating drives between the two of them, and he was looking really good. On the year, I think this is an important one for Harvey too, and obviously for Travion Henderson here. It's the percentage of runs that have gained positive yards over expectation for next-gen stats. 29% for the 2 rookies here. Only Alvin Kamara and Michael Carter are worse. I think that's important for Harvey because he had that one really long run, and that makes some of his efficiency stats look good. I don't feel like he's been that good like up the middle, but like that run came up the middle, so all his up the middle efficiency stats look bonkers, you know. I think this is probably more indicative of where we've been with Harvey. That doesn't have to mean that's where we'll continue to be. He could get better. The offense could get better. He could get more work, but like nothing we've seen so far is very encouraging. Whereas Dobbins has actually played pretty well.
Right. It's very discouraging on the Harvey front. I mean, I've mentioned this in brief passing when we hyped him up as much as we did. Man, he was so good in college. But I was like, you know, running in that Gus Malzahn, that system he ran in at UCF, it's like, it is very Tennessee-esque, where there are a lot of light boxes. And for his style of running, that did certainly help. He just doesn't get that at the NFL level. Like, nobody's playing Bo Nix like that. Like, nobody gives a crap about Bo Nix throwing vertical. He's like, what, 4 of 20 on passes, 20-plus yards, Bo Nix this year. So it's not good for Harvey.
Yeah, for sure. All right, I'm going to put the Kansas City Chiefs backfield usage in the first half of their most recent game up on the stage. We've got a 62% snap rate for Isaiah Pacheco. That led to 2.6 PPR points. But 8 rushes for him, 4 for Kareem Hunt, only 1 for Brashard Smith. They did design a bunch of targets for Smith, but 45% route rate for Pacheco as well, compared to 28% for Smith and 14% for Hunt. Hunt did hurt his ankle in this game, and it looked really bad, but he did come back. They taped it up, and he came back. But I did just want to point that out. You know, we brought up we could be one injury away or whatever. He's already dealing with an injury, and the team like really was treating Pacheco like the clear lead back, which is now 2 weeks in a row that's been the case. So that's why I brought him up earlier. I think Brashard Smith is cool, but I don't know if he's ever going to be somebody they give a lot of work to in the backfield. I mean, this is a team that's playing for ring, and Brashard Smith is a guy who just transitioned to running back. So I don't know how much longer we're going to see him getting significant snaps in the backfield as they gear up for the playoffs.
Yeah.
Could be wrong. I hope I'm wrong. That'd be fun if
interesting.
I'm wrong.
It's really interesting because when they did lean on McKinnon in that role, I felt like it was a product of what they didn't have in the past game with their skill position players, but now they have all that. Like they really do, man. Like not just Rice, Worthy. It's like even Juju plays a nice role for them. Hollywood can make plays for them. They just have a very wide array of players that get involved. So I probably agree with you. I do like his talent, but the role is definitely a concern for me.
Yeah. All right, we're going to wrap up with some of these next-gen stats. I just want to look at some of these guys and just kind of play around with some comps and see who looks similar just according to this data and then according to our eyes, of course, because we watch it. Was there anything else that you wanted to talk about from any of the tape that you watched before we do that?
We covered all of it, I think. I'm looking through now, but got notes on the Bears, ETN. Yeah, we got all of it down, I thought, and I'm happy we got to talk a little bit about the pass games.
Yeah. Okay, I want to look up real quick. Yeah, Brashard Smith only spent 46% of his snaps in the backfield in the first half of this game. 36% out wide, 18% in the slot. To me, that's just not, that's what I'm talking about. He didn't have any backfield snaps in the first half of the Detroit game the week before that. Literally no backfield snaps in the first half of that game. They're using him more like a weapon than a running back. It was cool that they got him runs at the end of this game, and in garbage time, it was him, it's like,
right.
It's like the Travion Henderson thing where it's like, why isn't he getting the garbage time runs? What's going on? This is so weird.
Get that.
Like, why do they not want to see the rookie? Like at least the Chiefs gave him a chance to do some running back stuff, which is cool. So yeah, that's why I want to bring him up. I don't want to be negative about Brashard Smith, y'all. You can watch all this.
I don't think you're being negative. He's a great player, but they have so many mouths to feed, and those players are good players. So it's a numbers game.
You can watch all his runs on my Twitter. Okay, let's talk first about Cam Scatterboo. See if we can find some comps for him. Do you have any? I feel like the most common one is David Montgomery.
I don't hate that, but I don't love that.
You feel like, Montgomery is more of a dancer, more of trying to make people miss with jukes and stuff, right?
No, I think Montgomery is more of like a he makes hard cuts, gets in and out of his cuts really violently. I think Scatterboo's more of like a gliding.
Okay,
He has good jump cuts, but he's more of a gliding running back.
Yeah, I like that.
I really am struggling with a comp.
Right. I think it's really hard. I was really psyched that they got him out in space in this last game. Yeah. They did some stuff to get him out in space because that's part of his game that is really cool and we haven't seen. So far, it's just been headbutting people over and over. I think he can do a lot more with the gliding type of stuff that you've talked about. The block setting and the vision out in space, I think, is actually really, really good. What do you think about the Peyton Hillis comp? That's one that gets thrown around some.
I hate that comp.
Right? Is that just exciting whites?
I first need to address a hater real quick in the comments. This is just bothering me. Dan doesn't watch the games, I'm convinced. It's just based on two things. Pacheco needs a long TD run to score. Pacheco had a 7-yard TD. I know he had a 7-yard TD. Has he done that all year? Is he scoring a lot of these red zone touchdowns? One game? That leads you to believe? What are we talking about here? As far as Smith getting involved, I know he had carries in the fourth quarter, but he did also have design touches in the passing game, which is what I was referencing. I apologize, Jacob. That got me worked up. Let's get back into Cam Scatterboo. Were we asking about Peyton Hillis? Is that who the comp was?
Exciting whites. Yeah. Is that all there is?
No, it can't be Peyton Hillis. That's just not a good comp.
I'm saying, is that the only reason we're getting this comp? Like, they both run hard and physically, but I feel like Scatterboo is a lot more athletic.
Scatterboo attacks
Hillis
contact.
Was a pretty good athlete, though. Sorry.
He was. Scatterboo attacks contact, but he also has this excellent patience behind the line of scrimmage. I showed off a play that you retweeted this week. He also has jump cuts and the ability, and I think the best way that was described to me, and I don't know who I would comp this to, but was by Hayden Winks, who said he has so little fat on his run. So, and maybe that was Josh Norris. I'm not sure. I apologize if I credited the wrong person, but he just knows how to maximize space. There's so little wasted space in his cuts. Now, someone I've thought about, but I don't think is good comp is like Maurice Jones-Drew, somewhat like a Maurice Jones-Drew type runner. Not the best comp though. I don't know, man. I struggle mightily with his comp, and I've been trying to make it for a while for Giants fans.
As I look at the next gen tracking data here, The one who looks the closest to me is Breece Hall. What do you think about that? He's a bit of a glider.
Hall. Yeah, like Breece Hall, though, like Iowa State Breece Hall, when I think of that version in his early Jets career before the injuries, I think of like gliding, but then making that one cut and downhill go. That's not necessarily Cam's style.
Yeah, definitely more top end speed and probably more burst.
Well, definitely on both accounts, but that's okay.
I feel like Scadaboo
has underrated burst. That is
like
sure.
dog. He just showed up to the combine and is like, I'm going to jump out the gym and I'm going to leave. Like 40-inch
underrated
vertical.
Burst.
Like I feel like he has really strong legs. Yes. And his like initial burst is pretty nuts.
It is, and we've seen him win the edge a lot. People are like, "Is he ever going to win the edge at the NFL level?" Well, he does, despite those question marks going into his profile. Coming into the NFL.
What about Josh Jacobs?
No,
don't like that.
Don't like that. I don't know. I don't know the type of runner, right? He's got jump cuts, doesn't waste a lot of space, maximizes space, runs into contact, but can win the edge laterally. Maurice Jones-Drew is not terrible. He's not like some Giants fans have comped him to Ahmad Bradshaw. He's not that choppy of a runner, though. It's a different style of running. Bradshaw was very violent again, like Montgomery with his cuts. I don't know.
Yeah.
He's awesome, though. I know that. He's really freaking good. Ian Rappaport put out a tweet just showing how good the rookies have been this year. Scadaboo has more yards and more touchdowns than any rookie had from last season's class at any position, wide receiver or running back, to this point. And he didn't even start the beginning of the season.
Oh, yeah, man. He's cooking. Kyron Williams, Chuba Hubbard, Rachaad White are players who look similar according to this data in terms of the efficiency of the movement and like north-south versus horizontal movement.
A little bit of a Chuba, not much, but a little bit.
I think he's like a more explosive.
And
Chuba.
Bigger. More explosive than Chuba is good.
Rachaad White's interesting to me. Rachaad White is playing way more decisively this year. I've seen him like really truck stick some guys.
I thought he did that last year too.
I think he's just gotten better at that as he's gone along, which makes sense. He was an inexperienced guy coming in, and he looks similar to Scadaboo in this way. I think Scadaboo is way more powerful, but they're two guys who can handle a decent workload and have the frame and have the receiving and are kind of gliders. It's a very weird one. I never would have thought of.
Yeah, it's interesting. I don't think I have that.
Okay. Let's talk about our boy, Bill. You want to hear my comp for Bill? This is going to make people mad because they already think that I'm way too in love with Bill Krosky-Merritt. You ready for it?
Yeah, let's hear it.
It's Bijan Robinson. It's like 75% of Bijan Robinson.
Oh, that's a tough one to swallow.
My buddy was over the other day and he's like, who Bijan reminds me of? It finally got to me. He's like, it's Le'Veon Bell. He it's the start stop and the
I know what he's saying.
Yeah, the really intense acceleration off of the deceleration and everything, and the ability to change direction, but also have way more power than you expect for somebody that's
kind of like that one a lot.
And I was like, you want to know who the other person that you've compared to Le'Veon Bell in the past year was? It's Bill. You said the same thing when you watched Bill. And just the other day, I just happened to watch Bijan after I watched Bill, and I'm like, these two run really similarly.
I know what you mean from a style standpoint.
I haven't been brave enough to say it because Bill has disappointed us these last 2 weeks, and obviously he's a round 7 pick, and we're talking about one of the most talented running backs we've seen in the last 10 years in Bijan Robinson. But just thought I'd throw that one out just for fun.
Yeah, it's interesting.
Thanks for giving me that.
It's interesting. I think Wise Guy had a good comp in the comments. Shout out Wise Guy. Tomlinson and Bijan. I know where he's coming from that, though I do think Tomlinson was more of just a decisive get downhill type of runner in between the tackles that people don't remember about him. But I do know exactly what the reference is too. And I could see that with Bijan too. And they both have a lot more top end speed than a player like Le'Veon.
Javonte Williams looks really similar to Bill within these two metrics in terms of the efficiency and then the time spent behind the line of the scrimmage. I think Javonte's way more physical is basically the key difference there. I think Bill has a little bit more burst at this point.
Yeah.
But they are two guys who can really make people miss with the starting and stopping. That Javonte used to be really, really good at that stuff. Javonte at his prime was a better lateral mover than Bill for sure.
Yeah.
At this point, I think he's just a bigger, dad strength version of Bill.
He makes some good cuts though. He's made some really nice cuts this year.
Yeah, like he still can. Like I think that's I guess what I'm saying is like Javonte, when he's been like drained of his power a little bit, is like basically where Bill is. Bill, like I think Bill is a really effective start-stop guy and is an underrated athlete. But he's just like not as powerful as a lot of the guys that run this way, which is kind of weird. And so like where does he settle in? I think Dobbins was my comp for Judkins. Let me keep thinking about Bill, but I wanted to bring that up before I forgot. What do you think about Dobbins as a comp for Quinshon Judkins right now? Like the best version of Dobbins and like a slightly bigger version of that.
I feel like when I watch Judkins, he reminds me the most of a better version, though I like this player too, of like Dowdle. We just watched Dowdle. I see a lot of Dowdle in Judkins.
Judkins, and part of it is the line, but like his efficiency number isn't nearly in the range that Dowdle is. It's basically middle of the pack. And then like his time behind line of scrimmage is actually pretty high. And I've noticed late, especially the last few weeks, he's doing a lot more of this. Like he's getting there and like waiting for something in the hole.
Sure.
He almost always finishes those runs forward. But he's doing more of that than I remember seeing at Ohio State, where he was like in a better offensive environment. He can normally just hit that, and then even his first few games. I guess that's why I brought up Dobbins. Is like I think Dobbins does some of that too when he's like not quite there for him, but then he definitely will hit it. And then also both of them are really good in the open field of like breaking a tackle and then being able to power through it and like keep going for the explosive play. Like the freaking touchdown that Judkins had this week was so insane. To be able to break that and then like accelerate and still score.
Yep.
And
he
I
has
guess
such good footwork. And somebody put this in the chat. They're right. He has incredible footwork, which Dobbins does have as well.
Yeah.
So it's not a bad comp.
It's just a weird, like I don't think I would have thought of it because it feels like Judkins is like this big, beast of a running back. So I think of like Jonathan Taylor and stuff like that.
Yeah, no, I don't think that. My favorite Jonathan Taylor comp is still going to be Omarion Hampton. I'll stand by that. And I think it'll play out over time. I feel like they're such similar runners.
I hope so. I think that's basically all I've got on Judkins. Like,
yeah, it's a tough comp.
It is.
I want to see more of him too. I haven't got a lot of chance to watch Judkins this year as much as I'd like to.
I think I dug into a little bit of the earlier data. I think I went back to at least 2022, looking at some of these running backs, and I noticed that Chubb is way more north-south now than he used to be. I think if I didn't do this, but I think his like earlier data probably is pretty similar to Judkins. And we brought him up as like a statistical comp coming out of college for Judkins. So that's I think a decent one. Do you have any thoughts on them as like key differences?
I think the Chubb comp is way closer to Dobbins than it would be to Judkins. But again, like I don't want to.
I see where you're at. Yeah,
I'm mostly judging that off of watching him at Ohio State. I want to get a better chance to watch more tape on him with the Browns.
Yeah, I like that Chubb is just like this insanely beefed up version of Dobbins.
Yeah. Yes.
I like had a hard
Prime Chubb. I mean,
Prime Chubb is insane.
He was so good.
Okay, do they have Woody Marks data here? I believe they do. Have you got a chance to watch Woody? Did you watch the freaking 9 or 10 p.m. your time? 10 p.m. start.
Yeah, I did watch that game. Yeah, it's so hard to
crazy.
evaluate him from the broadcast angle of watching a game when you just watch this offensive line fail time after time. So I don't know, man.
So his efficiency is one of the worst, or I don't want to say worst, but one of the most amount of movement for the least amount of yards, which doesn't have to be a bad thing. Like Christian McCaffrey's is really high this year. He's been having a tough time finding lanes, and also he's done like Bucky Irving's is really high. And I think CMC is kind of doing something similar where like in the open field a lot, they're like kind of reversing field and finding different ways to keep creating yards. So it doesn't have to be a bad thing that it's high. Saquon Barkley's you'll see is really high here. It cracks me up that Zach Charbonnet has like by far the highest number in the league because they were calling him the Hammer in this past game. The broadcast was, and it's like he can be, but that's not really who he is. Honestly, he's pretty choppy, and
he wasn't like that at UCLA either, by the way.
He finishes strong, but he definitely can make people miss too.
Right.
And is like trying to like find the right lane and stuff a lot when he gets to the line of scrimmage. That was just cracking me up because they were like, "Here comes the Hammer," and he came in and got stuffed. Like, oh no. Okay, so Woody is near the top of this list in terms of efficiency of movement, but his time behind the line of scrimmage isn't all that high. And I think that they've liked that, and that maybe is why they've tried to give him some of these more short yardage situations, is that he has run pretty decisively. Monangai is another interesting one. Like Monangai in this stuff, comparing him to, why is he not? I guess I lost his data. Like I noticed that RJ Harvey's not on here anymore either. They were on here earlier. I don't know. Monangai like had a much quicker time to the line of scrimmage than DeAndre Swift, which is something I noticed. And just anytime that is happening in a backfield, I wonder if that might be meaningful to the coaches. I guess I lost some of these rookies. I don't know why they're not on here anymore.
They're having such bad season. No, I'm just kidding.
I don't.
Yeah, go ahead.
Woody is where I'm at to finish out. I wanted to like see if you had any sort of comp for him, because I just don't know what the heck to make of him as a player, even though I've watched literally every Woody Marks touch this year. And I watched a lot of his college film too. I didn't think he was going to be, I watched him the preseason too. And I feel like every time I've watched Woody, he's had a lot more burst and decisiveness to his running and
then what we were sold the bill of. Yeah.
His contact balance has been like, not only like, can I absorb and bounce off of a hit, but I can like kind of keep my feet planted and move through the hit. And it
seems like they're turning the backfield over him too. Like there's things to like about his profile. It's just, you then have to get on board with the Texans offense and the Texans run blocking.
Right. That's just notable to me. That's all different than I expected watching him in college.
Yeah. Agreed.
I thought
on that. Totally agree on
maybe
that.
It was just that USC team was such a mess trying to run. But yeah, he has like a positive rushing yards over expectation on the year. I don't really know if I have a good comp. Like Ramondre is bigger than him. That's who looks similar in this data. Is Pacheco an insane comp? I feel like he has been running stronger than Pacheco.
I can't do Pacheco, not prime Pacheco. I don't even think I have a
honestly Chuba. Maybe Chuba's not a bad comp. I think Chuba's stronger than him.
Yeah, Chuba's not a terrible comp.
Or like maybe Blake Corum, but I also think he's stronger than Woody Marks.
Yeah, I love watching Blake Corum tape. I think he's been so good this year, man.
Yeah, he looks really good. And
if Kyron goes down for at
all
any
this
point
data
this year, I am going to be so high on Corum rest of season.
Maybe Jalen Warren is a decent stylistic comp, but I think Warren is much better. Much
worse version of Warren.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah, I think Monangai is interesting. I said these comps are not great. We're just trying to look at these. I just want to look at this data specifically. We're just doing this for fun.
Yeah. We're riffing a little bit here at the end.
And we're only looking at the guys who are like in the league right now. So you're very limited. Like,
yeah.
There's like 25 to 30 guys who are in the league and playing right now.
For sure.
Yeah.
All right. Anything else before we wrap up here?
No. Just wanted to talk about running backs a little bit.
Thank you to everybody who tuned in. We spend a lot of time watching the tape of these backs. We hope we're giving you an idea of what our opinions are moving forward of not just these backs, but these backfields, because that's going to be the key when it comes to the effectiveness of the scheme and the blocking as far as can we trust some of these players moving forward. Really appreciate you guys tuning in. Really, really appreciate you guys leaving a comment, liking the show. If you can do that, that helps us grow the show. And we will do a better job of reading iTunes and Spotify reviews moving forward. Please leave them. That's how we grow the show. You know, if you leave a review and a rating on Spotify and iTunes, all that's going to do is move us up those charts on Apple and Spotify. And then people who don't know about our show will see our show. And our objective is get them in, let them get a chance to actually listen or watch the show. And we're hoping they'll stick with us based on the content. And we hope you've enjoyed the content. I really do appreciate how active the community's been. It's been very cool to see it grow over just a short period of time, less than a year. So thank you to everybody again. We'll be back with you tomorrow, Mastering Matchups. Jacob will be back with you, I should say, on Thursday. So look forward to that as well. Have a great rest of your day, and we'll talk to you soon.